The reading this morning is taken from John chapter 20, verses 24 to 30, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation version. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the Twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound in his side." 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. May the Lord bless this word to our understanding.
Good morning. My name is Diana. I've been part of CB for my entire life, and funnily enough, this is not actually the first time that I've stood up here and spoken about Thomas. Many years ago, when I was about 5, my brother and I were asked to participate in a church service along with some other children by reading a few verses. The verses that I was assigned were the beginning of today's passage, but in a different translation. So it began with, "Now Thomas, also known as Didymus." I will never forget those opening lines because I practiced saying the name Didymus so many times so that I would get it right on the day. As such, I've always felt quite drawn to Thomas. He isn't someone we know a whole lot about in the Bible. He's mentioned only in 8 passages, 4 of which are just a list of Jesus' disciples. One of the few things that we do know about him is his name. He's also known as Didymus. Both names are translations of the word twin, Thomas being Aramaic and Didymus being Greek. We don't actually know why he had this name, and in fact it may not have been his name from birth. It's possible he was a twin, but another theory is that he looked a lot like Jesus, so he was nicknamed Twin. Either way, we don't know much else about him. We don't know his family background or how he became a disciple. What we do know is that he was strong in his faith, he doubted, and he loved Jesus. The first time Thomas actually speaks in the Bible is in John chapter 11. This is the passage with the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. It's the story of Lazarus dying and being raised back to life. But in the background, we find Thomas showing from the very beginning that he is a strong and dedicated follower of Jesus. Some context is needed here. In John chapter 10, Jesus is in Jerusalem and is being challenged and threatened by his opponents, to the point where they actually picked up stones to stone him. Jesus manages to escape the city and crosses the River Jordan, where he is safer and welcomed by many. It is there that he gets the news that Lazarus, his beloved friend, is sick and dying. He chooses to stay where he is until he receives the news that Lazarus has died, and then decides to go to Bethany, which is back across the river and less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, where he had just been threatened. This is where we first hear from Thomas. Some of the disciples had earlier protested against going back to Jerusalem, fearing for Jesus' safety and their own. Upon Jesus' declaration that he was journeying to Bethany, Thomas speaks out to the other disciples. "Let us also go, that we may die with him." No hesitation, no doubt, just pure faith and love for his Messiah, a willingness to go wherever Jesus goes, no matter the risk. The second time that we hear Thomas's voice is again in the context of one of the most well-known passages in the Bible. John chapter 14 takes place during the Last Supper, after Judas Iscariot has left to betray Jesus, and as Jesus is comforting and encouraging his disciples. He begins by saying, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going." In response to this, Thomas has a question. "Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way?" To be fair, this is a very valid question. Okay, so imagine that conversation. "You should come to my dad's house. I'll prepare a room for you." "Okay, cool. Where is it?" "You know the way." "How can I know the way if you won't tell me where it is?" Jesus' answer to Thomas's question is an oft-quoted verse. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Throughout this, Jesus is reassuring Thomas and the other disciples that they do know the way to go. They know Jesus, and he is the way. Keep following him the way they always have, and they will end up in the place prepared for them. These two occasions are the only two times we hear Thomas's voice until today's passage about his doubts. In these passages, he's shown as having strong faith, encouraging the other disciples, and questioning Jesus so that he can be sure to follow Jesus wherever he goes. And then we come to today's passage. We begin by hearing that Thomas was not with the other disciples when Jesus appeared to them. This first appearance, according to John, had taken place on the evening of Easter Sunday, when the disciples were locked together in a room for fear of the Jewish leaders. Thomas was conspicuously absent, with no explanation given for why he wasn't there. Maybe he was sick, or in the bathroom, or had pressing business to attend to. This is yet another thing we don't know about Thomas. Whatever the reason, he wasn't there. Perhaps, though, just maybe, he wasn't there so Jesus could have a chance to show us the ways that we can grow through our doubts. When he later joined the disciples, Thomas would have been bombarded with excitement for those who had seen Jesus. He truly was alive. It was a miracle. Poor Thomas no doubt felt overwhelmed, which I personally think explains part of his reaction. "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." If we put ourselves in his shoes, he's just missed an incredible experience that his friends will not stop talking about. He's probably a bit bitter. Whatever the reason he wasn't there, it can't have been a good enough reason to miss this, especially after the weekend they've had, the traumatic things they've witnessed and experienced. It's no wonder that Thomas would struggle to believe that something so wonderful had happened. Now, before we continue with this narrative, I would like to invite the kids to come up the front. So, any kids want to come up? How are we all doing? Good? Who's had good holidays? Yeah? Who's excited to go back to school tomorrow? Who wishes they had another week of holidays? Yeah, me too. Right, I have a container here. What do you think could be in here? Any guesses?
Ice cream.
I can confirm there is not ice cream in here. I wish. That would be lovely, wouldn't it, if I just brought you up here to give you ice cream and then sent you back to your parents covered in ice cream. Wouldn't that be great? Right. What if I told you that there was a cactus in here? You wouldn't believe me? You wouldn't believe me? You'd hide under the chairs. Fair enough. What if I told you that there was a chicken wearing boots in here? You wouldn't believe me? It's too small to put a chicken in? What if I told you that Minnie Mouse was in here? Too small? Too small for Minnie Mouse? No, not. Minnie Mouse is a mouse. You could fit a mouse in here. That's right. And what if I told you that I had a coin with a platypus on it in here? You don't believe me? No? Okay, what if I told you that I have all 4 of those things in here? No way. Who believes me? Put your hand up if you believe me. None of you believe me. You all think I'm making it up. Okay, so you all don't believe me. Why don't you believe me? Who wants to tell me why you don't believe me? All right, Lachlan.
Because firstly, a platypus would not fit in there. Secondly, a big chicken would not fit in there. And thirdly, a boot would not fit in there.
Okay, all very valid reasons. It could be a boot for a baby. A baby boot would fit in there.
Because we haven't seen it.
Because you haven't seen it. Oh. Okay, I think Olivia wins. We can all go home now. No, all right, Olivia, do you want to come have a look at it then? You can open that. Don't touch anything in it, but you have a look. See what you can see in there, but don't show anyone. Don't tell anyone either. Do you believe me now? You do believe me now? Sort of. Sort of. Okay, that's a worry. Okay. What about the rest of you? Do you believe me now that Olivia's seen it? So. Lachlan, you still don't believe me? Pardon? What does... Oh, kinda. Okay. Okay. Does anyone definitely believe me now? What would it take for you guys to believe me? To see it? How about I show you? And I'll also put a photo up on the screen so the adults can see too. I've got cactus. Nope. Got Minnie Mouse. Got a chicken wearing boots. And I have a coin with a platypus on it. Well, that was pretty fun. You guys know now that I was telling the truth, don't you? You've seen that I really have those things, even though it's a little bit ridiculous that I would have a container with a chicken wearing boots on it. We have been talking today about a man called Thomas, one of Jesus' disciples, who had trouble believing that Jesus had really come back to life until he'd seen Jesus for himself. All of his friends had already seen Jesus alive again and had told Thomas, but Thomas needed to see Jesus for himself and feel his scars to know for sure that Jesus was truly alive. Because it just sounded so crazy, just like me having a chicken and a cactus in that container, and a Minnie Mouse and a platypus coin. Do you think that Jesus was mad at Thomas for not believing right away? No? No, he wasn't. Jesus understood why Thomas doubted, because it was such a strange thing to understand. It's the same when we have doubts or questions about God. God doesn't get mad at us, but he helps us to learn and grow in our faith. He doesn't always give us all the answers, but that's the point of faith. It's trusting in what we can't see and understand. All right. We have now come to the point where Thomas expresses his love for Jesus as the Lord. It had been a week since Easter Sunday. We don't know how Thomas is feeling at this point. Maybe he thinks it's all been an elaborate prank, or maybe he's starting to believe that Jesus really did appear to the other disciples. But this time, when Jesus appears again in the locked room, Thomas is there. He sees Jesus. Jesus begins this encounter by speaking to the room. Peace be with you. He had said this the first time he appeared to the disciples, as they were filled with fear and anxiety over what had happened and what was coming next. It's like a summarized version of one of my favorite verses, which Nathan referenced last week, and it's part of that conversation that happened at the Last Supper that I was talking about earlier. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. In such a tumultuous time, peace was what the disciples needed more than anything else. Jesus then turns to Thomas and addresses him directly. He knew what it was that Thomas had said earlier, that he needed to feel Jesus' wounds for himself to truly know that, to truly believe what he'd been told. So Jesus tells him to do so. Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. While there is a little bit of a rebuke in there, Jesus' aim doesn't appear to be to tell Thomas off or to punish him for his doubts, but rather to meet him where he is in his faith at that moment. He knows what Thomas needs in order to believe, and so he encourages him to seek it. I can imagine Thomas in this moment, his mouth gaping, his eyes wide, to not only see Jesus alive again in the flesh, but to realize that Jesus had somehow been aware of what Thomas had said earlier would have been astounding. Thomas would have realized the omniscience of Jesus, which explains his reaction to Jesus' instruction. Yet another thing that we don't actually know about Thomas is we don't know if he actually did reach out and touch Jesus' wounds. Nothing explicitly says whether or not he did. Different scholars have different beliefs on this. Personally, I'm very squeamish, so in Thomas's shoes, I'd take a quick glance to check that it was real and not stage makeup, and then I'd casually try to avert my eyes for the rest of the encounter so that I didn't pass out or vomit all over Jesus, because I don't think that would be a very good look. But what we do know is that Thomas was overcome. It seems to be an instant transformation from doubter to believer. My Lord and my God. These 5 words are so powerful. By saying, my Lord and my God, Thomas is not just declaring Jesus' position, but he is personally surrendering himself to Jesus. He is declaring that Jesus is God, something that is alluded to at the beginning of John's Gospel, but Thomas is the first disciple to openly state it. In these words, we hear Thomas's adoration and love for Jesus as God. He who once doubted and struggled to believe has now declared that Jesus is Lord and is truly alive. After Thomas's declaration, Jesus has one final thing to say to Thomas and also to us. Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Thomas was one of only a handful of people who got to encounter Jesus on earth and build a relationship with him based on those encounters rather than on faith alone. It is through his testimony and others like him that those of us who have not seen Jesus for ourselves can believe. Thomas was no less of a believer because he encountered Jesus in person, but he didn't receive this blessing from Jesus, which we today receive as believers who have not seen Jesus with our own eyes. The painting, The Incredulity, that's a tricky word to say, of St. Thomas by Caravaggio is one of many paintings depicting Thomas's encounter with Jesus. There are actually multiple paintings with this exact title and subject matter, but this is the one that stood out to me as showing the most passion and humanity. We see Thomas reaching for Jesus and Jesus guiding him to help Thomas understand that this is truly the risen Jesus, both human and divine. Caravaggio was very skilled in using contrasting light and shadows in his paintings, and this skill is evident here, but it does more than just depict a scene from a story. I actually really like what Wikipedia had to say about the painting, so I'm going to quote from there directly. The light falling on Christ emphasizes his physicality and at the same time suggests his divinity and significance to the viewer. The shadows, representing doubt, sweep over St. Thomas, but as he touches Christ, he is drawn into the light. What a beautiful last sentence. I'm going to read that again. The shadows sweep over St. Thomas, but as he touches Christ, he is drawn into the light. That has to be one of the most accurate and poetic descriptions of faith I've ever read outside of the Bible, and it came from Wikipedia, of all places. The shadows may sweep over us, but as we touch Christ, we are drawn into the light. Like Thomas, we may be overcome by doubts, but if we reach out to encounter Jesus, we can be overcome by faith and love. We can be drawn into the light. I invite you all to pray with me as the worship team comes up for the last songs. Lord, thank you for the ways that you meet us where we are, despite our doubts and our struggles. Thank you for the way that you revealed yourself to Thomas, so that 2,000 years later, we can continue to have faith that you truly did rise from the grave, fully human and fully divine. Help us to seek you, to reach out to touch you despite any shadows of doubt that may linger over us. Draw us into your light and fill us with your love. Amen.